It's very significant that today, the 5th of November, which of course is gunpowder, treason and plot, when there was treason so much around and the king was saved by people finding out about Guy Fawkes and his plots to blow up Parliament, that today is a day where the press have finally released the extent of the treason, where our MPs and Prime Ministers have given away the powers that they were entrusted with, not to give away to other nations, and instead of that they've given them away. And the Mail very kindly today listed these powers, and it says the powers that we have signed away. Foreign policy. The Lisbon Treaty gives the EU its own legal personality, allowing it to negotiate and sign international treaties on behalf as if it were a nation-state. The deal also creates a new foreign minister for the EU and an unelected president who will become a public face of the EU around the world. A position that Blair planned and schemed and did all the things he's done to try and get there. And then, of course, he converted to Catholicism to get to that position, because Europe is 80% Catholic. Most of those states are not democratic, have no democratic traditions. Most of them have been dominated by dictators. And now we have subjected ourselves to that sort of majority. Are we crazy? Criminal justice. EU judges to gain powers over areas of justice and policing for the first time. This could include giving the Quango Eurojust the power to order prosecutions in Britain. The EU's police force, Europol, will be able to initiate investigation on British soil for the first time. So now we're given a foreign police force the right to come and take you and me away. Sovereignty. The treaty contains so-called ratchet clauses that allow EU leaders to hand over new powers to Brussels without a new treaty. This self-amending power means Britain could lose its policy vetoes without a vote in Parliament, let alone a referendum. Isn't that disgusting? Labour laws. The Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is part of the treaty, contains 50 new rights. These include the right to strike, which could weaken Britain's labour laws and make it easier for union barons to wreak havoc, which they did before, in the 60s and 70s, where whole industries were held to ransom. Transport. The treaty scraps the British veto in 16 areas, including transport. This could lead to the introduction of EU-wide road pricing scheme in Britain. Defence. The treaty calls the EU to move towards a common defence policy, which means experts believe will pave the way for an EU army. They've already started that with a 69,000 force. Immigration and asylum. The treaty makes it more likely Britain could be forced to accept asylum seekers. Brussels may also get a say in the level of benefits paid to asylum seekers. What on earth have we done? We have walked into this, sleepwalked into this. The media have said nothing. Everything has been kept quiet. I have been writing about this for ages. Even when I was doing television work, I was talking about it. And here we are, we've arrived at this disgusting state. And it's interesting, it's the 5th of November. Treason. It's absolute treason. I couldn't care what anybody else calls it. And I want to read something that, Oliver Cromwell, much a maligned man he was. But, I've always been a monarchist and still am. But listen to what he said, and this is what we actually require. It is high time for me to put an end to your sitting in this place, which you have dishonoured by your contempt of all virtue, and defiled by your practice of every vice. Ye are factious crew, and enemies of all good government. Ye are a pack of mercenary wretches, and would, like Esau, sell your country for a mess of pottage, and, like Judas, betray your God for a few pieces of money. And haven't we seen a lot of that? Is there a single virtue now remaining amongst you? Is there one vice you do not possess? Ye have no more religion than my horse. Gold is your God. Which of you have not bartered your conscience for bribes? Ye are grown intolerably odious to the whole nation. You are deputed here by the people to get grievances redressed, are yourselves gone. In other words, he's saying, you are the grievance. And that's what we've got here. If 75 to 80% of the people did not want any part of Europe, and that was their job to redress grievances, and that's a grievance, what have they done? They've ignored us. Take away the shining bauble there, and lock up the doors in the name of God, go. And that is disgusting when you think of where we've got to. We're part of a Europe where 95% of the budget is missing, according to the auditors, not me, according to the auditors. This country pays in 14 million a day, now more, because this government gave them more money. And 95% of that is missing. That amounts to 14 billion a year. They've given them 4 more, so that's like 18 billion a year, which we can ill afford. Now, the whole of the EU budget for the last 14 years, now 15 years, will amount to trillions for 27 member states that have all contributed. Now, if 95% of that is missing, don't you think once in Parliament Mr. Cameron could have got up and asked a question, what about this EU budget that 95% is missing? Not a thing was said. I know I've watched every Parliament question time that's been available. And if I haven't been there, I've recorded it, because I'm interested. And here we sit, day, week, month, year after year, with absolute stumped silence. Nothing is said. And I just think it's disgusting. They will talk about things that the average person doesn't understand. But tell them that the budget, the money is being stolen. Tell them there's 200,000 laws that nobody has even read and can read. The MEPs don't even read them. And I know that men who've talked to them, because I was a candidate at one stage, and I had to learn about this. And, you know, they'd ask a MEP and say, well, what do you think of that law? And this is up in the dinner room, which is like the Queen's Palace, incidentally, beautifully done. These people live like kings. And they say, well, you know, I didn't have time to read it, but those people over there said it was a good idea. And that's how these decisions have been made. Those people over there said it was a good idea. And here we've passed 200,000 laws, which are now becoming national laws. We don't know what the hell they're talking about here. We have got no idea. What is this criminal justice? What about the police law? We don't know anything about it. You couldn't even ask your MP, because he's never even seen it. And the way they run their own expenses, for goodness sake, they can't even run that. So what hope have we got of them knowing anything about the 200,000 laws that are being passed in this Parliament, which they've not discussed, not seen, not heard of, and then they're telling us it's a good idea? How can you vote for a thing like that? We must get out of this. You know, I couldn't care if the Conservatives, the Labour, or the Liberals. I call the Lib Lab Con. And quite frankly, we must do exactly what this man did, Cromwell. We must clean this Parliament out. And we must, in actual fact, in the coming election, get rid of our attitude of, I have always been a Labour, therefore I'm always going to be a Labour. For goodness sake, don't stop voting for independents who are pro-Britain. Make sure you understand that for pro-Britain, not putting out some sort of manifesto that nothing is fulfilled. Like Blair, twice in Parliament, gave us an undertaking at the dispatch box to questions. He was asked if we would have a referendum. He said yes. And then one man got up on the opposition bench and said, I just want to get this straight. If every nation in Europe turned down the constitution, would we get in a referendum? And he said yes. And of course, straight off the election, he did away with that. And then this man here, Brown, called it a treaty and said it was different. It wasn't different. Everybody knows it's the same darn thing. They just chopped a few clauses around. It's nonsense. It's lies, deceit. And how can an organization that has been established on lies and deceit, godlessness, continue? I mean, you can imagine the lies and deceit that you've been told. And that's only what you know. What about the 200,000 laws that we don't know anything about? What about the rest of it? They say we've got opt-outs and this sort of thing. It tells you here that that is not the situation. We've got to get out of this before this nation is destroyed. Thank you very much for listening.